The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by Media Clip, Advertech Printing, and Independent Photo Imagers. Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Peugeot.
Hello again, and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Peugeot, and today we're joined by David Hori, who is the principal of Topline Operators. Hi, David. How are you today?
Excellent. And yourself?
I'm doing great. Now, your company is in the position of helping businesses be acquired and also acquiring other business. Can you talk about your journey into that?
I can. So, my story for the last 10 years has been largely helping founders that were primarily VC funded grow their ideas. And what I mean by that is when you have a founder that has VC money and an idea, they need to partner with someone where the rubber meets the road. And that was me.
Yeah, exactly.
They hired me to do a lot of the hiring of the initial team around them and put in place process and systems around them to grow really quickly.
Yep.
And God blessed me tremendously in that in the last 10 years, I helped 3 different founders grow things to the point where they could exit via acquisition. And that was tremendously positive and a great experience. But before jumping into my 4th startup, I realized I want to do this for myself.
Right.
I don't want to keep building for other people. I want to build for myself. And so for the last 2 years, I have been doing just that, where my primary focus is buying businesses, small local businesses, because that is one of the most meaningful things I think I could do with my skill set to contribute to our society. I have accidentally fallen into coaching business owners because I meet so many business owners and I'm looking to buy the business. And what I find is that I just am talking to a stuck business owner. Right. They don't actually want to sell, and they probably actually shouldn't, but they've tried a bunch of different things. And like, well, I'm still stuck. I don't know what else to do. So I guess I'll talk to this guy about selling my business. And I don't want to just buy a business. So I do coach a select few business owners to get them to where they want to go or break free through a ceiling that they've been experiencing.
Tell me a little bit about the scale and the scope of those 3 businesses you worked on before, just so our audience has an idea of the type of things that you were working on before you decided that local was the thing to do.
Yeah. So I would usually be brought in somewhere post Series A, Series B. So you've got a little bit of money and some kind of traction around like a minimum viable product. Is probably, to put it in simpler terms, there's 20 people or less on the team at this point.
Right.
And I would come in and, again, do a lot of the hiring to put the key players in place that we're going to start building teams around. And that process that those people are going to need, the systems that those people are going to need to be maximally effective. And then the last piece is aligning them around the vision of the founder to make sure everybody's rowing in the right direction. And so, about 20 people or fewer, and then taking it to about 200 people was usually about the time where I was most impactful at the next startup.
How were you involved in the exiting process? Was that of those people? Was it, I'm just curious as to what you felt your role was. Was it advising the founders saying, hey, listen, it's time to hand this thing off, or what you felt your role was?
The big exit that I contributed to was the most recent company called Carmera, which produced digital maps basically using photo imagery from cell phones. And my contribution there was to ensure one of the big things that drives value in a exit is you're acquiring the team and the talent. Right. And you want all of them to transition into the new entity. Exactly. And so creating an amazing plan to ensure that we understand what the plan is from the acquiring entity, that everybody is engaged and continuing to build full steam ahead, because if you take your foot off the gas, that's also highly problematic. And if they decide to pull the ripcord and parachute out before you close it, or right after you close it, that's also problematic. So really maintaining the cohesiveness of the team was a major contribution. And then actually, we were acquired by an entity that didn't have a lot of the systems in place and processes and teams in place already. It was a new entity. And so they very quickly were looking at, how are you guys doing things? How do you guys get things done, like hiring or, a
Right.
lot of different basic things that I'd already built. And they got to use us as the template because they were acquiring a couple of different entities, including a division from Lyft at the same
Mhm.
time.
So it sounds to me like you're really tuned into the people side of the business. What's your background in terms of, do you have like a HR background?
Yeah, so I tend to tell people these days that I'm a recovering HR professional.
Okay. Okay.
But yes, my corporate career began in HR at one of the
Okay.
largest law firms in the world, and so that was the kind of kickoff to things. And
Hmm.
when it's created quite the bias in my world. So
Right.
when I start hearing about business problems, I keep digging and digging and digging to get to the root cause, and usually because of that bias, I conclude, oh, you've got a people problem. Sometimes
Right.
it's a process problem, but oh, you've got a people problem.
Right. So company culture is really something that's super important to
Absolutely.
you and into a company. When you're talking to someone who is like a startup founder, let's say it's your typical guy who gets a burr under his saddle that he's gonna change the world with his thing, his widget, and he wants to build a company to do that. There's a lot that needs to happen there in terms of getting people on board with that vision. So, can you talk a little bit about that vision sculpting process that needs to happen?
One of the things that I look for when I talk to founders is they have to be able to articulate that vision
Mm.
in super simplistic terms because I need small and easy words. And then I turn around and use those small, easy words to go make disciples of
Right,
others.
right, right.
And if they can't, then it's not going to be a good fit for me. And that also kind of has followed me into my business acquisition journey. I've
Right.
got to be able to understand it. If it's important to Warren Buffett, it should be important to me too. So businesses that I can understand and that vision. But there is a discovery process and also identifying, I don't just want to build a widget, to use your word. I
Mhm.
want to be aligned with a mission or with values. Those are two things that are really important to me when I'm
Sure.
looking at different founders. One of the strongest missions was to, again, with Carmera, reduce the number of vehicular deaths that are human related errors.
Right.
So our technology could really do that in a meaningful way. That's something that you can assemble a lot of brilliant minds around. People are
Sure.
taking pay cuts and leaving Google and all kinds of places to come contribute to that. And I'm excited about that. And that translates to what we're able to build. Does that
Sure.
answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, no, very much so, very much so. So let's talk a little bit of let's segue from digital technology to help cars see and know their surroundings to just your general small business,
Mhm.
where maybe someone is growing, they're doing okay, and they don't know where to go, right?
Mhm.
They don't know whether to sell, whether they don't know whether to keep going, they don't have a succession plan. Someone calls you up and
Mm.
says, I need help with that. Where do you start?
I'm engaging in these conversations with business owners through the lens of, I think I want to buy your business.
Right.
That's usually how the conversation starts. And a part of that discovery process is understanding what is the owner's role in the business today. I
Hmm.
often ask, like, tell me about the hats that you're wearing in the day to
Sure.
day. And that really helps me identify, oh, doesn't sound like there is a succession plan. It sounds like they are carrying a lot of the business on their shoulders. Or maybe they've done a pretty good job of putting a team in place to
Sure.
help distribute that load. So that's a major thing that I'm looking at through the business acquisition lens. The other thing, though, is that sometimes you find that the business growth is limited because the owner has become the bottleneck. And that's another thing that that question kind of teases out is like when you're wearing all the hats, it's impossible to scale at some point beyond.
Right.
You can't work more than 60 hours a week. So your growth is limited and capped just by nature of that. And there's things we can do to resolve that as well.
Because I think that's especially in the photo imaging industry, right? There's a lot of family-owned legacy businesses, been in family maybe two or three generations, and there is so much imbued knowledge
Mhm.
within a business like that where we've always done it this way. These are the processes, it's all in our head. But if someone like you were to come to them and say, "Hey, I'm interested in buying your camera store, your photo lab, your photo studio.
Mhm.
Where's your operations manual? It's in your head. It does no good."
100%. I could not, you can't overstate how important that manual is, the process, the repeatable process by somebody else. I always, ask like, what happens if you get abducted by aliens? I like to use that rather than, the bus or some other analogy, but like,
Exactly.
what happens if you get abducted by aliens?
Right.
And do people know what to do? Is there a process? Can the average person follow that process? Or is it just, like, oh, my assistant who's been with me for 20 years and they're the only one that understands how my brain thinks. And if they leave or get abducted by aliens, then we're really up a creek without a paddle.
Right. So, and it's not just like the financial side, right? It's the operation, it's the why we do things this way. I think that's one of the things that where people mess up when they do an operations manual or procedures manual. They just talk about what they do, but not why they do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of my favorite methods for even solopreneurs and business owners that are by themselves or running a bare skeleton crew is called the camcorder method,
Mhm.
right? And so you're filming yourself doing something that you do every day, and whether it's on a computer or actually physically doing it, and then you're able to add the narration on top of it. And
Right.
that's tremendously powerful to be able to just put in a central place for that assistant, the new hire or whatever, to get up to speed on things and how we do it and why. And you film yourself doing a single task 3 times, like how you kick off a podcast. You film that 3 times. Somewhere between the 3 times, even if you're kind of not super consistent, they're going to get enough of it so that they can do it 80% as good as you, which I think is really the goal. Like if somebody else can do it 80% as good as you,
Mhm.
then you have yourself a pretty solid employee there.
So when you are talking about a business to someone, a business to acquire, what are they telling you the reasons why they're leaving or want to exit? What's the reasons why people are telling you they want to exit a business?
The reasons span an entire spectrum from where like I physically can't keep up and keep doing this any
Right.
longer to I'm unwilling to miss another family member's, key milestone because I'm too busy working to I've had hobbies that I've wanted to pursue all my life or, you know, time is super precious for some external reason. I had to talk to somebody recently whose mother lives in Spain and, she's unwell. So he wants to be able to spend more time in Spain with his mother. And this is the window of,
Hmm.
to do that.
Hmm.
So the reasons usually vary. What the unspoken thing though
Right.
is usually they're tired of carrying the weight by
Right.
themselves, the
Right.
risk by themselves, and just being able to share that or offload it. And then, many people haven't thought about or been in a position to like invest in like, say, a retirement plan or 401k or something. And the business is that retirement
Hmm.
potential. So those are
Hmm.
some things that usually come up.
And sadly, since most businesses don't actually sell, or if they don't sell, they don't
Mhm.
sell for what people want. That's not actually a great way to plan your retirement.
No. No. And that's again why for select business owners, I will coach them. I want to see them win. And whether I buy the business or not, a lot of times their livelihood and well-being in those retirement years is tied to the business being reworked. They need a new playbook to implement
Right.
and a couple of years of runway to do that to get the business to a place where it is meaningful.
Hmm. How long have you been evaluating businesses for purchase? How long have you been doing this? This couple of years, you said?
Yeah, a couple years.
So has there been one what's the one that got away?
Gosh, you ask great questions. I love this. The one that I try not to lose sleep over still. Very unique niche. Real estate lending company.
Mhm.
One of the best ways to make money is to make money using other people's money.
Right, exactly.
And this business was in my own backyard. It wasn't listed publicly, and it prints money. And I wanted to, given you're at an interesting intersection where there's a lot of complexity and things that you probably need to know about from a regulatory perspective and things when you're dealing
Sure.
with banking, finance, real estate, those kinds of
Absolutely.
things.
Barrier to entry, obviously. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And also, I have a really high bar for myself. And if I'm dealing with other people's money and other people's retirement funds and all those kinds of things, I want to make sure that I can deliver with certainty on that investment.
Sure.
So I went and found a partner who already owned a business in that space. And we decided to partner together on this deal. I brought the deal to him. And, there's a post on my Instagram about this, the gift of a failed partnership. But the long story short is we realized that on paper we looked great. In actuality, we were not compatible. And so we ended up splitting ways. And I just said, you know what? May the best man win.
Mhm.
And I shouldn't have been surprised that, the business owners went with the person that already owns a real estate lending company instead of the guy that's freshly jettisoned out of startup land. But that one hurts.
Not being picked, right, is always is a thing that you feel deeply inside, right?
Indeed.
Yeah,
But God has a plan for everything. And as much as that was the one that got away, and I still think about the margins and the opportunity to really grow that, there's a reason for it.
Tell us a little bit about some of the things you specifically look for in opportunities like that. I mean, not every business is, of course, a business where you get to, lend with other people's money. There's not a lot of those out there. Are they all financial, or is it technology, or is it a niche? What's the thing that David is looking for?
Sure. So I look at just about any business that comes to me organically through my network. If you were to call me up and say, David, I know a business owner that's looking to sell, I would connect with them.
Mm-hmm.
My outreach, though, I'm specifically making contact with two distinct searches. One of them is more tech related, which is in the realm of e-commerce.
Right.
So people that are selling widgets, as you said, not digital products, but a physical widget is something that would be really interesting to me because I understand the business systems and the opportunities to really squeeze operational efficiency out of an online business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. The second is kind of interesting and more obscure, which is water related.
Okay.
When I say water related, think well drilling, think water pumps, think, like septic filtration, those kinds of things, but mostly well drilling and pumps. And
Wow.
if you have any exposure to the world of, buying small businesses, everybody and their mother is fighting over an HVAC company or an electrical company, right? The same reasons why they're attracted to those businesses apply to the water industry. There's no succession plan. They've been overlooked by technology. It's fragmented, all these things. But nobody's looking at it. And I have a partner that's a third generation well driller. And so that's the one I'm doubling, tripling down on water related opportunities.
Wow, that is a first for my podcast, is a person seeking out well drilling opportunities. That's amazing.
Happy to be that first.
Well, that brings me to another question is, when you're talking to people about buying their business, like you said, a lot of people think of it as their retirement, right? Or they want to cash out, be done, go to Spain, do whatever. How receptive are people to, let's say, an earnout scenario?
I have never had that first seller from the outset say, hey, I'm really hoping for some seller financing.
Okay.
Everybody wants the big cash out. They just want to be done. They don't want any strings tied to the business. Occasionally, I'll meet with somebody that actually enjoys a very specific piece of the business, and they would love to continue doing that.
Right.
If they could offload the rest, and that's a really productive conversation. But everybody wants to be cashed out. Same reason why very few people who win the lottery, say, go ahead, pay me $3 million every year. That's enough. No, I for some reason need $72 million today. Like you can't even spend it, but okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So the answer is very few, but that's where most businesses get done. You mentioned earlier, and you seem to be, educated on the subject. Most businesses don't sell. And that's a huge contributing factor, is the unwillingness to even consider it, or and part of that is brokers can add friction to that, right? Like the
Right.
broker is ultimately compensated by the dollar figure that it gets traded at close, and they want that to be big. They don't want it spread across years. They don't want their dues to be spread over years. So they're incentivized to encourage you to take a lump sum. But if you want the deal done, that's almost critical, especially today. In the last 6 months, there have been changes to the SBA and other, programs that are government backed that used to be really powerful for me as a buyer
Right.
that have almost removed the incentive of using, institutional financing. Critical. I can't overstate how important that is. If for no other reason, then you're telling me you got a great business that you believe in and I should buy. And I'm saying, I want to tie the continued success of the business to you being paid out. And you're like, yeah, I don't know about that.
Right.
That's a red flag to me.
Right. Okay. I mean, that's an interesting way to say it because I know, again, some people do their earnout thing, and because that's the only way they can actually sell the business, because they actually the buyer has put out a lower amount. But you'd rather have them not be involved.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you're a pet owner who wants real talk on training, behavior, and everyday life with animals, check out the Fresh Patch Podcast. Hosted by Drew and Gabe, we cover the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. So wherever you listen, search the Fresh Patch Podcast, where good pets get it.
No, earnouts are, I think, tremendously powerful, and I have a strong preference for that because if there's any kind of disagreement in the value of your business,
Right.
okay, I'll trust you, but we're going to tie it to an earnout. If you say you can do this, if it does it, then I'm going to give you more money. You should get more money. I am 100% for earnouts, and those are really powerful.
So let's talk a little bit about the valuation piece, because that seems to be another thing where there's some bones of contention, if you will, right? Because I always tell people when they talk about, buying a business, someone who's buying the business, they're not not giving you a reward for what you've already done. They're buying the future. They're buying what you're going to make out of the future. So what are some of the things you're looking for in a valuation that you can optimize?
Yeah, I think maybe I might have a different perspective, and I'm glad we're talking about this because most business owners, I think, share your perspective. You're paying for the future. I can't go and borrow money or get an investor, or even shouldn't. It'd be ill-advised for me to bring my own money into a deal based on the future.
Right.
I can only pay for what you've actually done. That's been substantiated. And so it's unfortunate that, in the last 5 years, we've got, COVID and the tariffs and those kinds of things, which really make your revenue lumpy or even trending in the wrong direction in the last couple of years. But that's going to happen if I also own the business, at some point. So I have to account for that as part of the calculation. And so I'm actually paying for actual performance. And that's where a lot of the disagreements between valuation were like, well, it could be. I had back in 22, I did, it hasn't done that for 3 years. And that's what I'm going to, base it on. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does. It does, because, that is one of the things where I think, there are people who believe that, like you said, it's doing X amount, so I deserve Y amount, when the person looking at it wants Z amount based on what they think the actual conditions are and what the future will hold. But like you said, you have to do that valuation on kind of the history of the business, and the person who's taking it over has to look at it and say, well, can I do that or better? And I imagine most people are thinking, I can do better.
Yes. Now, I will say there are different kinds of buyers, and you should solicit as many different kinds of buyers as you can. So I'm a cash flow buyer. I'm looking at how much profit your business is generating and looking at, can I use those profits to grow the business even more? Right. But there are other kinds of buyers, like a trade buyer. So if you, again, own a camera shop or 10 of them, and you want to sell somebody that's already in the camera industry and looking to expand into a new geography can pay a lot more than I'm going to be willing to, because I'm going to look at how do I squeeze more out of these 10 locations where they're like, I get a whole new territory, a new customer base that I can cross sell, so they can pay more. They have access to different kinds of funding and things like that. And likewise, there's, strategics and private equity that are like, we're going to make a play in this space. We already have a theory around camera shops. And so this is just 10 of 100 that we're going to bundle together and sell to somebody else. And they also can pay differently because they're not going to run it for 10 years. They're going to bundle it together, sell it to somebody else, and it's somebody else's problem, right? So there's different kinds of buyers out there that are able to offer different things. But being a cash flow buyer, I'm really focused on profit.
So what would be a typical multiple of a company you would look at in terms of like net earnings?
It varies by industry.
Sure.
And the biggest driver to that multiple is actually, I call it EBITDA. Other people call it sometimes SDE, like seller discretionary earnings, which is basically the annual benefit a business owner would expect to receive financially from running their business. But if you're making $500 in SDE or EBITDA, it's going to be pretty close to 1, 2, 2.5 multiple.
Right.
Again, depending on the industry.
Right.
Industries like software, where I can make a software widget once and sell it to an unlimited number of customers, higher multiples.
Right.
And then as you move up the scale in EBITDA or SDE, so from 500,000 to $1 million, 3 million, 10 million, that's where the multiples really start to increase in step functions as well. Right. And so the frustrating answer is it depends, but the place that I'm looking at, the SBA won't even approve more than like a 2 or 2.5x multiple on most small businesses.
Right. In my industry, the photo imaging industry, there's usually a lot of capital equipment involved. Right. There's, and in certain time, because it's a highly seasonal business, right? Usually a fourth quarter business when most of the profits and sales come through, then in a lot of ways, some of those folks are a lot like a retailer in that aspect. But again, they usually have equipment where they're producing products and having these things. And so how does that factor in to somebody who's heavily interested in the cash flow side as part of that equation? Is, high CapEx a problem?
It's not. And again, it's highly dependent on the business.
Yeah.
So like photo imaging businesses, well drilling is extremely capital intensive, right? Exactly. Those assets to buy a well driller is incredibly high barrier to entry.
Yeah.
And again, I tailor my offers around the deal that I'm looking at. And so if I'm looking at an e-commerce business that has no inventory, no assets, I'm going to have to bring to bear a different strategy than a photo imaging business that has tons of assets. And there's like asset-based lenders and all kinds of different ways that you can, figure out ways to acquire that business. And I think that that's one of the best ways you can do it. You can grow, whether I'm just looking to get into the business or grow through acquisition, which is something that I think many business owners haven't even thought about. But it's like, oh, if I want to grow my well drilling business, I could go buy a new rig. But what if I bought this other guy's rig that, he's a single man operator looking to retire? That could be a really compelling opportunity for you to acquire the asset, so to speak, in a different way.
What are some of the things that you're seeing in the world right now that are affecting kind of the acquisition world? Because like you said, you mentioned private equity earlier, and in certain segments of the photo imaging industry, primarily, certain portrait segments, there's a lot of private equity activity there right now. That's certainly out there. There's not a lot of options for people to go public these days. It just doesn't seem to be a very welcoming market for that. Do you just call up a business broker? What is it that you would recommend to somebody who's looking to sell?
I think, again, I'm not trying to be an attorney, but
oh no, of course not. Of course not.
The answer is it depends, which is their favorite answer.
Sure.
But for most local small businesses, going to a broker is probably the path of least resistance.
Okay.
And I will say that with the caveat of not all brokers are created equal. So it's worth interviewing them to understand and asking if they have referenceable customers.
So it's almost like engaging with any other business professional, right? Whether it's like a real estate agent or an attorney or someone like that. Everyone's got that title.
Correct.
They may do things differently.
Correct. So brokers will do a lot of the heavy lifting around, selling your business for you. And there's pros and cons to that, but that could be a good place. One thing that's not as people don't know about it, but I actually, if it were me selling my business, I would seek out just an exit planner.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
the exit planner is going to help me put in place the key things that are most important to buyers that drive revenue. And I'm going to start that process ideally 3 years before I actually want to sell and I'm run out of gas and burned out,
Right.
but at least 12 months before that, to start putting in place, that the operating manual you referenced and the team and those kinds of things so that I can maximize that exit. And I have an idea of what my business is worth.
Sure.
And then if I want to engage a broker at that point or just navigate that myself, I have all the options on the table with the maximum business value potential.
Right.
So
Cool. So tell me a little bit about what Topline Operators actually does. Like, is that your umbrella for like your all your interests?
it is. It's kind of the catch-all. And again, my North Star, my primary focus is buying businesses.
Right.
And I've added to the website, this piece about, working with business owners because again, I just encountered a shocking number of business owners that were trying to sell or talking to me about selling that I just really didn't think that was what best served them. And so I didn't set out to be a consultant or a coach of business owners and helping people navigate preparing to exit. But I kind of fell into that. So
Yeah.
Topline Operators is the umbrella that kind of captures and encapsulates both of those activities.
Cool. And so where do people go for more information to learn about Topline Operators?
Yes. So obviously our website is www.toplineops, OPS, that's short for operators.com. And I am most active on the socials on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So you can find me, David Hori, Hori on LinkedIn. And then Topline Operators, again, it's just at Topline Ops on the Instagram.
Great. Well, I hope people who are listening to this get a lot out of it. I know I did. I had some misconceptions and I didn't know a lot about well drilling. So this is good. So I really appreciate your time and your expertise, David. It was great to meet you.
Likewise. And I'll just throw this out there too. If you're a business owner and you have questions about exiting your business, if you're looking for resources, give me a follow on Instagram and reach out to me. I'm happy to point you in the right direction, send some free resources your way that'll get you started. Usually like what's the first step for most business owners? I can send you that playbook and happy to do that for your audience.
Oh, great. Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
My gift to you and thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.